And so I'm kind of unique maybe in that regard, where I just love to learn new things. I don't always try it out, but I like to learn about it. So you have a couple of different avenues here. Of course, technology is tremendous in this area today. Probably the most predominant education today for coaches are coaches clinics put on by state associations or local associations, and sometimes even companies such as Nike, Adidas. And now we're really starting to see a prevalence of other types of clinics, fundraiser clinics for programs and college programs. I know Kansas, for example, does their own coaches clinic. Duke does their own coaches clinic, where just the coaches from their staff provide all the clinicians for the actual clinic, and typically is now one day. So you'll see some of those foundation fundraiser clinics where they'll bring in some great speakers and they'll donate all the proceeds. To me, I'm a big clinician, at least early in my career, I think, in the first 4 years of being a head coach. This is where I've learned almost as much from the coaches sitting next to me, from wherever they're from, as I have from the people on the floor. But I'll tell you, what I've learned the most from clinics is what I don't want to do. Okay? All the coaches who you might talk to, who will watch this video, or who will talk about the teams that Coach Lang coaches, they'll admit they won't see us play zone very often. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm not a zone person, but one of the persons that you can't not admire is Jimmy Boeheim from Syracuse, and their 2-3 zone that he's ran for 30 years. And it wasn't really that I gained an appreciation for what that 2-3 zone was doing until I had a chance to see him at a Nike clinic in 2009 in St. Louis. And I just learned a whole lot more of why I didn't want to do that than why it was good. And if you go into that mindset, and many coaches will tell you this, this is simply me repeating something that I've heard before, but it's one thing to tell yourself this, it's a whole other to believe it. You can't do everything you hear about. When you go to a clinic, you're probably listening to some of the best college coaches or NBA coaches in the country, if not the world. All of their ideas have merit. Everything they do has worked, so on and so forth. So if you go into it saying, I want to do all those things, it's not going to work. You can't do it. Another thing that you've learned from for example, speaking of Jim Boeheim's 2-3 zone, is that Jimmy Boeheim's 2-3 zone that he runs at Syracuse is really not a zone that we see at the high school level, because he's doing with athletes that we oftentimes don't see. And so it's a distorted version of that zone, which some coaches obviously know, but outside observers say, well, you should do what Syracuse does. Well, we're a high school team in the Midwest who has totally different sets of players with different sets of skills, and the stunting and the things that are done within that zone are only probably going to be able to be done by college players with that level of maturity and that size, for one thing. So for me, in that case, it didn't really help me learn how to run a better zone. It didn't really help me learn how to beat a 2-3 zone in that particular scenario, but it gave me an appreciation for just how complicated basketball can be. It's not always simple. There are simple things that are being made a lot more challenging than they need to be in the game, and there are also the opposite of that. There are extremely challenging things that you feel like you may not even hit the tip of the iceberg with, that from an outsider's perspective seem easy. And I keep coming back to zones, but that's kind of a key theme in youth basketball today, is that if you go watch youth basketball in a competitive environment, you're going to see more zone defense than you've ever seen in your life, or that you can ever talk to anyone. And the reason for that is because of the developmental ability of the offensive players. Zone is very effective as a young player. And because more coaches are unfortunately concerned with winning rather than teaching skill all the time, that's not a secret. You're going to run zone, and you're probably going to win, because yes, a fourth grader takes about 2.5 seconds to get the ball released, and probably a zone is going to be there in time. And so why teach these kids man to man? And of course, that handcuffs them for the next level when athleticism takes all that away. So it's unfortunate that we're seeing that, but that's another variety of zone. A zone that you would run for 5th graders is different than a zone you would run for 12th graders, and totally different than how you would run a 2-3 zone at Syracuse University. And from an outsider's perspective and fans' perspective, and that carries on to the players, is they'll say, well, I know how to watch a 2-3 zone. You just put 2 players on top, 2 players on bottom, and 1 in the middle. That's what we did in 5th grade, or that's what we did in high school when I played. Well, that may have been a different version. Maybe they trapped in the corners. Maybe they denied the post catch. I mean, there's so many variations of things that just because you haven't played against it or played in that scheme, or your mentors haven't, you're going to come across things you've never seen. And that's what's great about clinics. Just versions. Very rarely are you going to go, maybe once in a weekend clinic, where you're going to go and hear of something you've never heard of before. I remember the first time I saw something called the amoeba defense presented, and I was like, okay, this is something new, and those kinds of things. So clinics are really good for coaches' education. And like I said, one of the things that I'm into right now is I'm using social media to connect with other coaches throughout the country that I don't even personally know, but they're in the same boat that I am, and they're on Twitter, or there's a blog that I follow, and they post, this is what I do. This is the best baseline out of bounds play I have, and I share that. I might share with them mine and post mine, and they might share theirs. There's no reason not to use one of the world's most powerful resources to have that ability, but the internet and social media can inundate you with information, just like clinics can. And so you have to understand that all plays and all defenses can be effective. All the great offensive plays that you'll ever draw up and all the defenses that you'll ever learn about can work and will work. It's just a matter of, will the X's do what the X's are supposed to do? Will the O's do what they're supposed to do? And can you get them to do that consistently over and over again? But I don't ever want to go into a season, a game, a practice, saying the biggest weakness or one of the main weaknesses is that our coaches are not prepared because they don't know how to do something. I think that's unacceptable for me as a coach, and that's why coaches' education is so important.